Welcome. It's Monday again. We're back down here at the shed working on the pinball machine, continuing on where we left off. I worked a little bit on the code that's in here and have my laptop hooked up. I'm going to load that in and check it out, and when we're ready to start our testing, I'll turn the camera on and bring you guys in here and show you what's going on. Okay, I've downloaded the latest version of code into the processor here. I've run it one time and already know that it isn't working correctly, but I'm going to show you what I'm doing. So we've got all of the score wheels here, and I have a score wheel reset that should check the switch on the wheel to see if it's open, saying that the wheel's at 0. If not, it steps the wheel, it moves to the next one, and does the same thing over and over again, and then it waits a little bit of time and it comes back and it does it again. However, because I didn't want this thing to sit here and just spin all day if it never found the wheel, I put in a dead man timer that says after you try 20 times, you should have found a 0 twice. If you haven't found a 0, then you're not going to find a 0. Stop testing. And I can tell you right now what's happening is it's never finding 0, so all these wheels are spinning over 20 times and then stopping. I'm going to hit reset on my microprocessor, run around to the front so you can see the wheels go. Okay, so you saw there that it ran around and reset basically twice and never got to the zeros that it needed to get to. So it's stopped and waiting there because the dead man ran out. And if I put the solenoid test on, put it the right way, that should turn it on in about 10 seconds. It should start flipping solenoids. So what I'm going to do is hook my laptop up now and check the switches one at a time and see if I can get any readings off of the switches as they're going around. So give me a couple of minutes to set that up and I'll bring you guys back and show you that. Okay, so far we've only diagnosed one switch wheel and we see where our problem is here. A little software change I'm going to need to make, but let me show you what I'm doing. So I've got these 0 switches here and they're all sitting in a position where the switches are closed. So I can reach up and grab the switchblade and I can just manually open and close it with my hand. Now down here I have a routine that's telling me X5 is the serial port I bring the data in, and then whenever I change it, it shows me which bit has changed. And I'm going to grab the score wheel 0 switch. And if you can see that, it's saying that it's the score wheel 10K switch. So I've mapped these row of switches the wrong way around. So let me try player 0's switches. I'm going to grab just the 10 switch. And it says that that is player 2. I wonder if I'm doing player 1, 2, 3, 4. That's player 3. And that's player 4. So I should actually... Yeah, that's right. So this is player 1, but it's mapped as player 2. This is player 2, but it's mapped as player 1. So anyway, I'm going to have to take my software and reallocate these switches a little bit. So I will do some checking and bring you back in a little bit. Okay, I hate showing screens on here, but what we've done is set up a little test routine that allows us to pulse one wheel at a time around about 20 times. And over here, we watch to see which switch is closing. And if you look there, you can see that where the 7D is on the end, down toward the end, I'm sorry, I jumped out of focus, it all of a sudden goes to FD, right down toward the bottom, and actually it does it up there at the top too. And so that's the 80 position, hexadecimal 80 position closing. So that allows me to map the switch I was closing to the relay that I was pulsing to the switch that closes. And we're going to step through and make sure that we know how these are all mapped out. And then I'm going to go into my array and fix that. So we've been stepping through these switches, adjusting them as we go and checking and making sure we know the mapping of the switches to the relays. And we came across an interesting problem that we're going to have to fix. If you look at this switch right here, you will see that it's mounted then upside down. It should look like that. All the rest of them, well, they're all dirty, but they look like that. But this one is upside down. So the long wiper, let me see if I can get around there, is mounted on the bottom as opposed to the top. So this switch absolutely cannot work like this and will have to be taken apart. Unfortunately, the wires will have to be removed and resoldered. So that'll take a few minutes to fix. All the rest of the switches have been tested out, mapped. We adjusted the ones that weren't quite making contact, and they all look really good. So we're going to stop working on these switches. I've got the mapping. I'll go ahead and fix my mapping matrix so that I have those all aligned correctly. And we're going to move on to terminating some more of these switches and getting them in their respective blocks. So that's next. Well, hello, it's Monday again. I didn't post anything last week because there just wasn't enough content and we didn't make enough progress to really show you guys anything. So I'll just add this on and you'll be seeing this as a 2-week run. Hopefully we'll make some progress today. I don't exactly remember where we were at, but let me tell you what happened. So last week we were wiring up this connector. We connected ground over here. We started trying to test the score wheels and it didn't work. We had a lot of abnormalities going on. So since then, I've been down here about 3 more times trying to do little fixes and stuff. Still a lot of abnormalities going on. It appears like we're picking up a ton of noise, or like the AC is shorted to the DC or something. I really don't know. While I was doing downloads and stuff, my microprocessor kept resetting. I ended up disconnecting the 5-volt power supply down in the box and powering the whole microprocessor from my laptop down here. And that actually made it a little more stable, but it still isn't working right. And I'm getting random firings of solenoids that don't even have anything connected to them, which is acting like the inputs are picking up noise. So I'm going to be troubleshooting on that today. In the meantime, Mike has ordered a bunch of replacement parts for the physical part of the machine. He bought a new front door because we couldn't get the old door straightened out to his satisfaction, a coin door. He bought a new coin door. I polished up the rest of the metal, and he'll be probably installing all of that while I'm working on the electronics here today. I'm gonna try disconnecting stuff, isolating it down, seeing if I can figure out exactly what's causing our problem. Interestingly, something I thought about, and one of the first things I'm going to try, is one of the last things we did before this thing went haywire was hook up these blue ground wires down here that are coming from the play field. I don't understand how that could be causing a problem, but I never tried disconnecting those in all the times I've been down here. So I'm going to try and disconnect those too. But one of the very first things I need to do, and I'm going to just swing this around here and hopefully you can see it over there. You can see I have a light box over there, and last week Mike tripped over the cord. It hit the floor, busted about 4 of the light bulbs in it, and tore out one of the sockets. So the very first thing I'm going to do, and I'm not going to film this, I'm just going to open it up and make sure that that socket that's broken loose isn't shorting out against anything. I brought some more light bulbs. I'll be installing those, and then I can get another light in here so we can see a little better when we're filming. So I'll bring you back after I get that done, and I get the wire disconnected, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what I'm going to be doing today. So stand by. Well, about 20 minutes later, and I have the light restored, sort of. So there it is there. You can see we have light coming out of it. One of the sockets was just busted in the back. It really wasn't a shorting hazard or anything, but I cut it off and cut the wires off and heat shrinked a little heat shrink over it just to make sure it took the broken socket out. These light fixtures had photographic fluorescent bulbs in them, and we broke about 4 of them. Right now I've put in 2 high CRI LED 100-watt lights and the 1 bulb that was left in there. So there's only 3 bulbs working in that light right now, but just looking at me with the light on this side and the other light on the other side, it appears that the new LED bulbs are actually putting out a bit more light. And hopefully it looks pretty good. Anyway, let's get back to work. So I've plugged in my laptop, just powered it on. This is the same place where it was setting last week. The box is turned off, and if I let me turn the camera around and get you in here a little closer so you can see this. Okay, I'm going to hit reset on the computer here, and you should see this thing go through a score wheel reset thing. Now, the relays are not turned on, so all you're going to see is the lights flickering. And in one of the last changes I did, there they go, a little strobing of the lights. You can see that there's a sort of a motion look to those. Is one of the things I was trying was not firing all the relays at once just to see if that made a difference. It really didn't, and I can tell you that I absolutely hate the sound that these score wheels make when they're firing like this. So it's not going to stay like this once we figure out what the problem is. But let me turn the power back on. I'm going to remove these switches right here. I'm going to turn the power back on, and then I'm going to reset this, and you will see that it'll fire these, but the other lights will be flashing also, and you'll hear solenoids firing in the background, or at least that's what it did the last time I was here. Okay, nothing apparent happened, but let me hit the reset. And now the score wheel should be clacking, and other things should be jumping too, I think. Okay. Why did that not reset? This is what I'm talking about with strange occurrences. And again, I'm confused because there's no power coming up to this board from the unit I just turned on. All of the relays should be optically isolated, so they shouldn't be causing any problems. But yet, we're having some sort of issues because now this thing won't reset at all. I'm going to turn you off and move you out of the way so that I can get in here and start changing some things, and I'll bring you back if I make some change. Okay, all I've done is disconnected the power coming from my laptop, plugged the power supply underneath back in, hit reset, and it's working. Now I did disconnect that, I don't know if I did that on camera, but I did disconnect this pair of ground wires, and right now the thing is sitting there and going through the resetting. It is not correctly reading the switch. Well, the switches are unplugged right now, so I'm going to hit reset, and it'll try and reset this like 20 times, and then it'll quit. And you can hear the noise it makes. So I'm beginning to think it just doesn't like the camera, because I've done this a couple of times and it reset fine, and now it's not resetting again. I am really, really confused. Okay, let me check the my voltages. That beeping is just saying that the meter is detecting that there's live AC in here somewhere. Okay, I don't know if you can't see that in there, but my meter is saying 5.02 volts, and it just scared the crap out of me. And let me check the AC ripple on this just to... Well, that's really interesting. It's reading 0.007 in AC ripple, which isn't bad. But it appears that I might have a loose connection down here, because when I pushed on one of the connectors, it started doing funny stuff. So I'm turning this off. I got a relay hung. Let me go check this power strip to make sure I got everything tightened down. I'll come back when I'm done. Okay, I actually did find one very loose connection. It was on this terminal right here, which just happens to be where my ground wire comes in and gets distributed to everything. So that may have been causing some of my issues. It certainly isn't causing all of them, though. So right now I'm going to go ahead and hit reset. Let's see if it works this time. So this time I've noticed that I'm getting lights flashing down in here and relays on the board when it's reset. I don't know if you can see it, but there's random lights sitting down there, and nothing should be doing that. There's nothing hooked up to the terminal blocks that ought to be causing any issues. Now I did plug in these switches, so I'm going to unplug those and hit reset again and see what happens. Okay, now only only these relays are flipping, but none of the other ones are picking up any noise. So it does look like these switch wires are bringing noise into this this circuit, and I'm not exactly sure what to do about that. Now you can see that they are coupled with the AC wires, so maybe there's some AC inducing into it. I do not have any external pull-up resistors on these connections. They are getting their pull-up from the internal pull-up in the chips, and it has a 100K pull-up, which is a pretty light pull-up. But I want to measure the voltage on these pins just to see, make sure it is 5 volts. I know it was at one time, but I just want to make sure that I haven't messed up in my setup and gotten something off and I don't have the pull-ups configured correctly. And Mike has just arrived. Yeah, I'm reading 5 volts, so it appears that I have the pull-ups configured correctly. Hey, Mike. Welcome. Well, so far, no luck. Let me turn off the camera here. Okay, guys, haven't made a lot of progress. I'm not sure if you can see here, but I've pulled the switch wires out of the bundle from the AC wires so that they're a little bit isolated. It's still a little jumbled down in here, and I unplugged the bottom solenoids just because they're tangled up in here, and I couldn't get them out. Just trying to get, if there's induced AC coming into these lines, to get as much of that out of there as possible. However, this really didn't help. I'll hit reset, and I think you'll see and hear that the other solenoids are still firing. So you can hear those other solenoids firing away there. So there definitely seems to be some problem I need to find. Anyway, I'll be back in a little bit. Okay, guys, I think I might have made a discovery that might make me kind of happy. I think this is a code problem. It occurred to me that I could get a similar symptom if I was reading these switches incorrectly. And while these are the switches that the code wheel should be checking, I mean, these are the switches that go to the code wheel, I might have them mapped in my software to something else. So I took a little ground wire and I just came over here and started touching on these. And I don't know if you can hear it, but relays on the board are firing. And they're consistent. So what's happening is as these wheels are turning around over here, whenever the 0 closes and opens, it fires off these relays, and that's what's causing the board to fire. So it isn't coupling from AC or anything. It is just I have these mapped wrong in my software. So I'm gonna go back, take a look at my software, figure out where I did that, and fix it. So I'm already feeling better. So I'll be back in a little bit. I know this is starting to look repetitive, but I just wanted to show you this. I have the cable plugged in. I replugged in the bottom score wheels. I can hit reset, and the wheels will go through their reset. They're still not resetting back to 0, but none of the other solenoids are flashing. So my whole problem was that I have a set of code that reads each of these 4 switch inputs. Now the score wheel inputs, I'm not actually going to use that routinely during gameplay because we keep the scores in software. But I thought that in the future, I would put in a routine that when a score wheel got to 0, I would check and make sure it was at 0 and that the score wheels were keeping up, and let the person know that score wheel was having problems or something if it wasn't showing 0 when the computer thought it should be 0. So I had put the code in there, but when I created this, I wrote this one first, and then I copied it to each of the other ones, and then I went through and made the changes. But I didn't make the changes on this one. So there was still code behind these switches that did whatever these switches did, which was fire off solenoids on the play field. So I just commented out that set of code, and now this is running clearly. So this wasn't induction or anything like that. Now, the score wheels still aren't working. They are not resetting to 0 like they should, and I'm going to hop into the code, and I read these switches in another place when I'm resetting the code. I don't use my normal background switch input routine. I use a dedicated routine to read the switches as I'm turning the score wheels. So I'm going to go to that routine, and I'm going to turn off everything but one wheel, and then I'm going to rotate that wheel around and see what the switch does as it's rotating around. So I'll bring you back when I get that code up modified. Okay, I've got you guys handheld right now. I just wanted to show you that I've made quite a bit of progress. I've actually got the things resetting. All except for player 2 up there on the upper right. You can see it's not resetting. And the last time I reset it, the upper digit on player 4 didn't reset correctly also. But I'm going to hit the reset button and reboot the computer. And what it's going to do is randomize these wheels first, and then it'll reset them back to 0. So hold on just a second while I come around here. One more time. Okay, so this time you can see that player 2 completely incorrect. The rest of them all set up correctly, but that this top wheel is sometimes, this wheel right here is sometimes not ending up. Strangely, most of the times when it hasn't worked, it's ended up on 5. I don't know why. And there you go. For some reason that time it ended up on 5. So we'll have to check into that. So we are quitting for today. What we did was just pull off our little bracket here so we could look behind and watch the lights. And the light for the 4th score wheel is never coming on, which means that we are either not commanding it to come on correctly, or I have a problem in this board where I've got a bit plugged in, or connector problem or something like that. So, but it's kind of the end of the workday, so we're going to quit. Let me show you the other side of the box, though. We've got our new front installed. Needs a little wipe down there, but a little polish job. But that's all been reinstalled, and that looks great. No more nicks or bends. And we've also installed the new the wire holder brackets up there, and tested them out, and that's all coming along. So we're moving along. So we'll be back next week.